Hey everyone, welcome to Why We Collect, episode 2. This month we'll be talking about Toys R Us memories, how great it was going in and smelling the plastic and just touching all the toys and telling our parents, "Hey, can you buy this for us?" Because at that time we didn't have the money for it. And then we'll get into our thoughts on Masters of the Universe, the line, the through the ages. So, all right, let's get into it. Dad, we went to Toys R Us a lot.
Even I was in Toys R Us even before you guys were born.
Yeah, well, that's true
That
too.
um, as soon as I started working and making money of my own, I was hitting Toys R Us. But even before then, me and my brothers, before there were toy stores, there were places that had they were like little shopping. They were like pre Walmarts, pre Kmart. Woolworth is one of them you would think of. And we would go and peruse all of the toy sections, you know, and I I remember the first time I'd known what an FOA source was, but I knew they were in New York. I was never going to get to see one, and I would like, oh man, I'd live there if they built something like that. And then one day I was watching television and there was a Toys R Us commercial and it was like heaven. It was like, I heard angels humming and singing, choirs, music playing in the background. And I said, I finally found a home. And I was in the one that I took you guys to all the time, a lot, so much that I would get asked by the people who worked there to help do something. And I do it in a heartbeat, hey man, would you help me carry this out and put it out? And then that's why I used to joke I worked for him before I worked for him. And then uh, the one time I was working and y'all were little and I needed extra money for um, Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the managers was like, "Man, you're here all the time. Just take a stock job." And I said, "But I worked during the day." He goes, "You'll be out of here by 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning." No. We'd be there till 4 o'clock in the morning. Half the time is because we were playing with stuff and when we were supposed to be stocking. It'd take nothing to get the end cap set up and everything restocked and faced. Um, and then we'd be just like all over everything, looking at it and doing stuff. I think I think
Put
Toys
it
R Us
put
should
put a year to that, Floyd. Sorry to interrupt. Put a year to
yeah,
that for me. What
19
year?
1979, 78, and then he was born in 1981.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter was born in 1984, so they both grew up going into Toys R Us's.
So were
Um,
you seeing the first wave of the Star Wars Kenner on the
oh
shelves?
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when they were advertised for the first time. I didn't get that box that everybody else got because my dad was like, I'm not paying for something that you'll never get. He was so sure that those people were being suckered that they were paying for a box for figures that were never going to come. So I didn't get any. And my first Star Wars figures, I went and had to earn the money myself. Start helping at grocery stores, just like the same way I did to get my comics and everything else. I went and worked for it, mowing lawns, doing whatever it could, saving my lunch money, and then I remember buying figures and coming home and I remember I had the original big head Han Solo and you couldn't put his gun in his holster and I was like, nope, I'm gonna fix this, and I resculpted a head, and I took an old black shoelace, some leather strapping I had, and I built a belt and a uh,
Holster for the gun.
a holster for the
Yeah.
gun, and then I took out a piece of little tin, soft tin I had, and built the belt buckle and glued it on, and I from that day on I was modifying them so they looked right, but I didn't think of them as hey, this is going to be a future collection. This was things I played with, you know
So Ryan,
it's
for you, your memories for Toys R Us real quick, and then
Well, for me, it's funny because what was close to me was KB. So I was more of a KB toy store kid because that's what was in the mall in a small town in Connecticut. And I don't even know where the nearest Toys R Us was, but I did go to them once in a while. I remember, I think by that point I was getting some of the Alien figures.
Oh, the Kenner ones.
I
Yeah.
really liked that line.
Mm-hmm.
Thought that line was cool. But what I liked about not to derail it, but what I liked about KB Toy Store is there was less aisles, a smaller store, but you had a lot of variety within one aisle. So
Yeah,
while
and
you
that
didn't have the quantity, while you didn't have the quantity of the Toys R Us, which was awesome, you had a lot of variety. So I was kind of funny that each time I would kind of pick a different toy line, grab one that my grandmother would get for me, you know. So one day I'd be picking up a Turtles toy, another day I'd be picking up a He-Man Masters of the Universe, another day I'd be picking up like Captain Power, just whatever one spoke to me. So I ended up with a hodgepodge of different toy lines, and you know, I was a kid that didn't differentiate, so I was playing with a little bit of each and mismatching all of them. And I always used to tend to like to play with the villains better. All the villains just look cooler, you know, Skeletor. Um, so that was kind of me. I was more of a KB toy kid, but when I was in Toys R Us, you know, one of the aisles that was my favorite was the Tyco RC car
yep.
aisle, because one of the ones I had, the Turbo Scorcher. I remember saving up for that did 360s. It had 6 wheels. So I always thought that aisle was really cool. Obviously, I was a Genesis kid, so I was always looking at. I remember, you know, having the money for like Street Fighter Champion Edition. I remember having the money for like, you know, Mortal Kombat on Genesis, and just looking at that wall, and just everything just seems so unaffordable. Even then, you know, it's just like everything was like $70, and
Well,
so it
this,
was
yeah.
few and far between when you could come home with a game, you know, and you'd grab that slip. Everybody remembers that. You grab the slip, take it to the front counter. If you were
Well,
lucky to talk your parents into getting you a game, you know.
as far as I was going before games were a thing. Even before Atari, we were going to the toys. The thing that is funny about KB is we used to joke about it being that the customers stocked the shelves because people would grab them and then put them wherever they wanted, and it didn't seem like the workers would come in and reface ever. So it was a treasure hunt in KB because you had to hunt through the entire store because you never knew what was hidden, what was
Yeah.
underneath something. So man, and then I was the guy who had the cart thing, and I would tear down an aisle and rebuild it just so I could find that treasure item in there. And then they would be like coming in like, who did this? But why does it look so nice and neat? Well, fix your stuff. And I used to do the same thing at Walmart for their videos. Remember those bins that they put the cheap ones? I would come in and empty that thing and stack them by movies, just looking for those key ones I wanted. And I remember somebody goes, "You can't do that." And I was, "Why?" And they were like, "No, because it's a grab bag. Whatever you grab out of there." I said, "No, I'm doing the work. I'm fixing it." And then there were people who would come and go, "What'd you find? What'd you find?" And I go, "Oh, what are you looking for?" "Oh, well, yeah, here, that's this one. I take it." And I was the same way at Toys R Us. I knew where everything was, and I would come home with a tie and a nice shirt, and I'd stop by Toys R Us, and somebody would go, "Sir, do you know where this is?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I don't work here." "Oh, I'm sorry." And I was like, "But no, come on, I'll show you where it is." And I would tell the people who worked there, they go, you'd hear somebody go, "I'm looking for this." "Oh, we don't have that." And I go, "Yeah, you do." "What?" "Yeah, you do. It's over here." And I take the customer and them over to it. "I didn't know we had that. Y'all should be
You know
paying
what was part
me."
of the magic? Was part of the magic for me in recollecting a lot of the stuff I had. I was, for whatever reason, I was attracted to some of the oddities in the toy aisles as a kid. So what I mean is, like, I had a Boglin, I had some of the Mad Balls, I had like Food Fighters, just odd, just some of the. That's not, you know, most of the kids. I feel like the kids I knew, they were getting just Turtles, or they were getting real Ghostbusters. But it seemed like when I grew up and I went to recollect stuff, it's like I had a little bit of everything. So I wanted to get that Boglin back again. I wanted to get some of those Mad Balls. It's just certain things would speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that Friday the 13th on NES really speaking to me. That cover, all that neon on that. So a lot of times I would pick a guy. I remember the River City Ransom cover. So a lot of it was like you know, I really was judging a book by its cover with a lot of these toy lines. Just whatever spoke to me, is it whatever I thought looked rad, on the aisle, whether it was a video game or the box cover art, or that blew my mind, like the Boglin, right? That they were in the little cage boxes. I thought that was so
Yeah,
cool.
there was no games out. There was like a peg wall with all of the barcodes, and then you would see images in these
Yeah.
little slip covers, and you would
Yep.
find the game, and you judged the game you were going to buy by
Just
the
by the
image
back
on the
cover.
front, and what when you flipped it over and were trying to read what the game was, and then you grabbed your little tag, go up, and you pay for it, and then you go over to the cage, and they'd hand it to you, you know. And what really made me mad was when you get to the cage and they go, "Oh, we don't have any."
Yeah.
What do you mean? You got like 5 of those tags over. Each tag should be associated with,
Representation, yep, of
yeah,
what's
of a
available.
game. Well, we don't have, and so that's when I learned that, there were not just the customers who walked through the door who were collectors. There were employees who were going, "Oh, I want this one," and setting aside for themselves.
Well, and to go back to Ryan's point is that, that was the one thing about back then, is that you could walk into a Toys R Us and there was just so much. It's like, where do I even begin to like look for things that are going to attract my eye? And the only way you did it was just going through every aisle to find what you had or what they had. And, we got to the point where it's like we knew exactly what sections we needed to go to for whatever we were collecting. And then that's what we'd get and leave. We'd luck out and maybe find something that we didn't even know hit the shelf because we were we had a pretty good inside scoop of what was coming out because of
Yeah,
being
but there was no, okay, generationally difference is
true.
we saw it in magazines.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, and maybe at
Reviews.
Christmas time on the commercials coming up, or the catalogs
Yeah,
we
the
saw
Sears
The
catalog
Sears
coming
coming
out.
out.
catalog.
Mm-hmm.
The Sears catalogs are my favorite. There is nothing like a time trip flipping through a Nintendo Power, but I got to say the Sears catalog, it's even more of a trip because you get the clothing, you get the electronics, you get like, you know, the camping supplies, you get like the
Appliances and
camcorders,
everything.
you get
Yeah.
the toy lines, they were really the marketing geniuses of the world were utilizing those Sears catalogs from the 80s and 90s and doing fantastic spreads to sell those toys and those items. It's just like, and unfortunately, if you go on eBay, some of those are expensive now because I have the Sears catalogs from like maybe 92, 93, 91, 92, 93. When you get back into some of the 80s ones, man, they get pricey. They get like $40. They want $50 because they're getting harder to come by.
Well, it's a good reference material for if you're writing books because a lot of people write books about old collection or GI Joe. You had like really good showcases of what was coming
Well,
out.
yeah, and you saw the pricing, and I'm like,
Yep.
Star Wars came
Yeah.
out, it was a dollar, I think it was $1.30 or $1.25 per figure, and I remember when it hit $1.50, I was like, man, this is highway robbery. I can't afford this, and
Uh,
it's all relative to how much you earn, you know,
That
and
was
kind of, yeah, I'll talk about, these stores. But we would go, or I would go, like you go to what used to be Alameda Mall. Well, it still is Alameda Mall, but it's a total different place now.
yeah.
The If you went to the backside where the AMC theater and stuff and JC Penney's, where you walk in, to your left was an old-fashioned drugstore that had a food counter where you still had people serving ice cream shakes and stuff, and you had prescriptions being filled in there. But you walk through there, and there was a toy section, and they would have toys that you wouldn't find in KB or anywhere else. You know, they were. They were the. I remember somebody said they were the knockoff, but I found Clash of the Titan figures in there. I found Warlord. I found the Hercules. I found so many things, and I'm not talking the Hercules like Adventures with Kevin Sorbo. I'm talking the old school stuff. Um, and I would go in there before I'd go anywhere else because that's where you'd find something that you weren't going to find, because the main stores carried the big name brand things.
Mhm.
They didn't want, unless they had to fill the shelves with that other stuff. And so then you would find all these other little stores. Then across from there was B. Dalton. So I'd go over to the bookstore. What kind of books are going to be there? Right next to that was KB. That was my next stop on my little, tour through the mall. Then I'd walk down and there would be an electronics store, and I'd go in there and look. Then up there's the where the what do you call it, the center where the food court is, and then they'd have like always some kind of mechanical thing in there. It was either a carousel or something else. And then I'd go on the other side of the mall where the higher end, the high scale, and at the end of there was where gold mine was. And then
Yeah, the
I
arcade, yeah.
always saved my money to go because I knew I was going to go play some games. And we didn't dream of having these games at home. We had to go to arcades to get our fix. um it just amazes me because you can go back online and you can find images of the circulars, the monthly or weekly circulars, the Christmas circulars, the sales, and just look at what things cost and what was available on a certain date. It's their little time capsules,
Mhm.
So that's the same thing with, we're talking about the catalogs. We didn't have instant gratification on online, the network. There was no network, there was no internet. You had to go find magazines, you had to find other groups, or people that were like doing their
Clubs.
own clubs, who were doing their own little flyers on updates from what they heard, and cons. You
Mhm.
had to go to some cons. Man, you'd walk into a con and see toys that were from other states. You go, why don't we have that here? And making them friends and them connections so that you can get that stuff.
I'll tell you something that's a missed opportunity right now that none of these toy brands are utilizing. You got to do throwback inspired toy ads again, just to circulate on Twitter and Facebook. You got to do it. You got to bring it back. We got to bring back these sets they would build in the 80s and 90s to film and shoot all that. When I compiled all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles commercials for the toy line and the Masters of the Universe, they were well filmed. They built sets to put the toys on. They need to bring, if a company was smart, even NECA could bring that back. You just have some budget for that. It wouldn't take much. You can even do it, very amateurly shot, but just have some fun with it. They need to bring that back because that our generation understands how cool and how much those commercials spoke to us for these toy lines that we would see in between the cartoons. It made us want to get the toys.
Yep. And you don't see that now because that's not their target audience.
No. And
They
that's
used to, it was a big thing to show kids playing with these toys.
Yeah.
And then they'd show the dad. It was always the dad who was playing with the kids with the action figures. The
Uh-huh.
mom would be working on something else and all that. All that's gone away. And that's because we don't sell toys to children.
Mhm.
And what,
But they got to bring that back, Floyd, and make that viral on social media because
yes,
all of us are on Facebook, Twitter to get, and they could get more potential people our age that want to rebuy toys but haven't got tempted yet. Those would be the ads to like if they did some of those throwback style commercials for MOTU Origins, they would so pull some new people to buy that line.
Well, and that's the thing too, though, because we don't have cartoons anymore to advertise. And I know that we worked so hard to remove cartoons as advertisement for kids, but it's like we have parents that complain about their kids sitting in the front of a tablet or some kind of electronic because of that, And it's like,
Yeah.
why can't you have a cartoon anymore? You don't even have a Saturday morning cartoons anymore where your parents could be sitting down and go, hey, I remember that when I was a kid. I'd love to get back into that with my children again. And it'd be a
I think
bonding moment for your child. And it's not like that.
we talked about that the other night, that I
Yes.
believe they need to bring back Saturday morning cartoons. The one thing that used to kill me is that other cultures view animation differently than we do. We
Correct.
always saw it as a means to sell something, so we had to
Yep.
be real careful. I mean, the cereal, I remember when cereal, I'm sorry, we still target audience when we advertise, whether it's kids, adults, or whatever. That still happens in advertising. That's part of their thing. But, you know, remember when G.I. Joe animation commercials came on, they couldn't be for the toy.
No, they were for the comic.
They were for the comic, and that was how people got around that. But the animation kids started watching those commercials,
They
and
wanted a cartoon.
they wanted a cartoon. The cartoon came, and then the toys came in to fill that need.
I would
And
add the fact that part of this is when we lost Toys R Us as the main toy store in America. Considering the fact Toys R Us is still in Canada and thriving, we lost where things that, because they had really good pricing. Some of the stuff would be marked up a little bit compared to where it was at maybe Walmart or Target, but you could get some really good exclusives there. You didn't have to go out of your way to try to get those club exclusives or the con exclusives because they would show up at Toys R Us. They were the big vendor for that.
it's because now everything's a niche market. It's all targeted. Whereas before, on the big box stores or whatever you want to call them, the big chains, they made their money through volume.
Mhm.
And so you had to have it. Now we have this on demand delivery. That's a bad thing, a way of saying, okay, we see something online, we order it. It's sometimes not even manufactured. Like when you buy a book on Amazon, sometimes that goes to their Amazon printing. They print the book, send it to you. It's not sitting in a warehouse somewhere. Unfortunately, when you make a toy, you had to make enough. They had to be stored in a warehouse, and then they would be shipped based on, how many were ordered and depending on the market you were in. And I understand that hurt people because there were a lot of the stuff that was left over. What killed me was, finding out that they were destroying things and burying it out in deserts, putting it in warehouses, setting it on fire to keep the price up. You know what? There's always a market for it, and making money off of it is still going to be something good. So you have toys. They don't sell, then they should get shipped back to the manufacturer. The manufacturer has secondary markets that they can push this to. It could go outside of the country. We know that all of them send toys outside of the US. They can't sell here. And they get female characters. They get the unusual characters that we can't even get here. There's things that I want that are in Britain and Spain. There's figures that I want to fill my gaps with. There's stuff out in Japan that I want. There's no more third planets. There are online places you can get, but they're marked up, and you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if it's a knockoff. You don't get to see it until you buy it.
Well, that's if you're buying it from a place that's not reputable versus like, Entertainment Earth or Big Bad Toy Store, where those are actually, secondary sellers for this product, or main sellers
But
technically.
they're main sellers who sell at secondary market prices.
Well, and then remember, we used to have outlet stores, and those outlet
Yes.
stores would be in neighborhoods that were, maybe they weren't as well off as some of the other
Yeah.
locations. So kids could
Depressed.
still get those toys versus, my mom can't take me to the Toys R Us because she can't afford it. But hey, there's a KB outlet store out over there next to Galveston. I'm going to go there and I can get maybe some Transformers. They may be out of print or whatever, or no longer produced, but hey, I got something. And we don't do that anymore.
No, the mentality became, we're not going to sell it if we can't make off it the money or profit line. They set a line in the sand. We're not going to sell it if we can't get it for this. Whereas before, there were other areas where it would funnel down to, even if, like you were saying, a depressed market area or other places, where they would be available and people would go and find them. It always found its way into the hands of somebody who would appreciate it or a child.
You know what we don't get as adult collectors these days, and that I miss being a fan of the 80s, 90s lines, is we don't get the play sets anymore.
Mm-mm.
You know?
We kind of do, but normally now they're vehicles. They're larger vehicles that you can kind of do, because like you think Paw Patrol, they didn't come out with play sets. What they came out with was large vehicles that were play sets.
Yeah.
Well,
what I
you
like
had
about
you had the
is
tower, you had the city,
True,
because I
true.
bought all those things
Mhm.
for Alice, who was in Paw Patrol, and there were play sets. They
Net,
were
Playmates
actually,
does it. Playmates
but
has them.
they don't do it enough. You know what?
No, they don't.
I have all these figures that I have to go and build my own dioramas for
that's what
because
I mean, yeah.
they look great. If you want to help sell figures, give them something to display it on.
It
You know,
helps with the creativity when you play as a
Right.
kid.
Mhm.
You need the backdrop, because if you're playing, like, I literally used to set up the play sets on a pool table I had as a kid. It was a great place for battles because I didn't have to like get my knees on the floor. Like, it was better for me to like I could stand up and kind of battle and set them up at arm length, like
Mhm.
level at the pool table, and have everything on there and move the vehicles on there. But yeah, it really helps having that backdrop, and
Well, yeah,
all the
because
playsets features where you had chairs that would drop, elevators, ladders, things to interact with, shooting weapons off of them, missile launchers, all that stuff. All those things really helps to expand what you could do with the action figures, you know?
well, the closest, I mean, we were getting to that as Mattel with the Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy
um,
that Snake Mountain's coming out. I'm so excited for that Snake
but
Mountain.
okay, again, its price point is targeting collectors, not children. Children aren't the ones who are playing with it. It's
Yeah.
collectors who are buying it. Someone don't even open the box. They're storing it so it can go up in value.
we're in the
You know,
speculator market again that we had back in the 90s with comics.
so here's my thing. They could reduce figures from 6 inches to 4 inches. That would allow them the area of creating dioramas and vehicles that would be storable. You don't have to buy some figure that's ship or something that's $300 and you have no
Yeah.
place to store it.
And that wouldn't bother me, Floyd, because my favorite figures are actually the 5 inch, the 5.5, and I think that's both MOTU and Turtles are about that, right? Because, okay, Kenner Star Wars at 3.75 or whatever, that's a little bit too small. What I do like Black Series, and they're pretty tall, but what happens is when you start to get 7 to 8 inches, sometimes it feels a little bit like a doll. And I don't really want to feel like I have a doll. I don't know about you guys. You know,
I grew up
sometimes it's
playing
fine.
I grew up playing with GI Joe, dude, which were
Yeah,
male
we're the 12-inch male
or a 12 inch.
Barbies.
They had cloth costumes, they had weapons, they had boats, they had scuba gear, they had spacesuits, they had
They actually
fire
had play
retardant
sets. That's
outfits,
crazy
and
too.
they had rockets, they had the
Yeah.
Saturn V, you had the helicopter that you could fit two of those guys in. You had, I mean, there was a ton of toys as I was growing up that were for 12-inch figures, especially military. So I know that it could happen. Now, granted, ours didn't light up. They had button things that you had to push to make the rotors go. But you had little motors sometimes that, like, if you connected a wire to it and hooked it up to the back of somebody, it would make them go up an incline. There were little things that to us at the time were fantastic.
By
You
the
know,
way,
I,
let me just say, whenever I do this show or any show where I'm talking about toys, I want to be in my toy room, and it makes me upset that I'm not in my. I need to be one in my toy game room, and I'm not, and it makes me just miss it. I need to be there right now.
Here's the thing. We'll move this from the weekend to one night you're home so you can do that. Because it does. Being able to look at my figures and stuff,
Yeah.
it helps with that nostalgia. And I was going to bring up, because I know you're talking about my problems with the 12-inch figures, or the fact that you have a limited articulation.
Yeah.
And
You had Kung Fu Grip. I don't know what you're talking about.
oh, come on, you can't get like you can't get like Snake Eyes in 6-inch figure scale in an awesome dynamic pose that represents something from a poster you had as a kid. And that's what I love about that V1 Snake Eyes from the classified line.
And you couldn't do that with the original.
No, you
G.I.
couldn't.
Joes
I mean, it was just like a cactar looking guy standing where, his arms are this way, the gun's out here, and his legs are, one leg's bent. He's sitting on his knee. I mean, there was no articulation in it. And on top of that, we were all kids that would sit there and take the guns in our characters and like bend the fingers so that way you could put the gun in. And that's how the fingers broke, because they didn't make enough space for the gun to go in there, or the swords.
Exacto knife and a hair dryer, man. Bend them fingers. I used to I hated when the fingers were closed. Take a little score and keep scoring a finger until I could make it where the trigger finger could go in where the it was supposed to on the gun, where the trigger was. I just didn't settle for those hands.
I get you.
But I didn't have to worry about things breaking until you started playing with them.
Well, and here's
so what is your favorite variation? Just to kind of segue, because I know we were going to talk about MOTU.
MOTU, yeah.
What is your favorite? Like, because I love, as much as I love Origins and the classic card backs that look like the originals, I think I look at like the lightning effect on those classics line. They're really beautiful to display on card. Like, the classics I'm talking about that were, what was that, like mid 2000s up to like.
Hold on. Y'all keep talking. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Grab one of those. Because
there was
the packaging is beautiful.
So there was the original line. Then you had the 2000X series, which is the 2005, 2003, 2002. Can't remember what year now. Where they revamped He-Man. I like that story much better because it was a little bit more darker in tone, but still had a little bit of comedic elements. But those figures were great. And then when they went from those to the classic lines that you're talking about, and then they did the whole Matty collector versions that they did, where they were a little bit more 6-inch, almost 7 feet. I mean, 7 inches tall or whatever, not 7 feet. That's a huge He-Man figure. But like even the Masterverse figures, all of them, whether they're the new Eternia or the She-Ra stuff or Revelations, they're all 7 inches. And I'm like, they're gonna tower.
So what's your favorite? Which is your favorite
right now? The new Eternia figures. I'm really enjoying those, and that's the thing is, like, I stopped after my mom did what she did to my figures, and I never got all of them back for my original line. I just kind of like, I stopped. I loved He-Man, but I stopped collecting it. And even when I loved the 2000X He-Man cartoon, it was fantastic, but I didn't collect any of the figures. My dad did. I was just like, I'm going to stay away. But until I saw that 40th anniversary He-Man figure, that I was sold. I'm like, I'm on board again, because it keyed to my nostalgia. It was as Rob calls it, that ick factor for collecting, or your nostalgia button to make you go, I'm right there as a kid again. This is what I always wanted as a kid, to have this amazing He-Man figure with like this amazing articulation and weapons, and it looks just like him when he was on the cartoon, maybe not as goofy.
It's just such a and you know me, I like the more goofy, slapstick, silly filmation look. But what I think is great about that, we both have different likes, like the different variations, is that's just a testament of how great these characters are, because you can have all these revisions and versions and looks, and they're always look cool, no matter which way you go. The more cartoony or the more realistic, they always work, and that's just why it's such a great cartoon series. Just Master of the Universe He-Man, it's a fantastic series, very creative. It will stand the test of time. You can do anything and keep remaking these figures as long as you keep changing it and doing it in a well done way, you know?
Well, and
Now,
oh, go ahead, Dad.
I was just gonna say that for me, I wasn't a big He-Man fan. I liked the cartoon. I liked
How dare
watching
you?
it.
How dare you, Floyd?
Okay, hang on. I liked watching them with my son.
Mhm.
I liked playing with them with my son. And so through him, I had an appreciation for He-Man.
Yeah.
When She-Ra came along, my daughter liked She-Ra. So then I transitioned over into that, but
Well,
it
look, can I ask
wasn't.
you a side question, Floyd?
Yep.
Why is it so? I hear this a lot, though. I'm glad you said that because I do hear from a lot of my friends, they're not He Man guys. Why is it, though, that like TMNT, it's almost universally, I don't think, I can't tell you one time I met somebody's like, I don't like turtles. I was never into TMNT. I always hear that as a yes, but like half the people say no to He Man. What can you
Yeah, because I wanted
expound on
Conan.
what you think? Why you think that is? Why do you think that is?
Because I wanted Conan.
Okay.
I was a big Conan fan. I read the books of Conan. I made my own Conan figures. I played the hell out of Migos, back in the day, and they had a Conan figure, and that's what I played with. For me, He-Man was a ripoff of Conan. I was like, give me the real stuff.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, just to focus back in, it was through my kids I had appreciated it. I loved Thundercats. I'm sorry.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I
Oh,
love Thunder,
absolutely.
and I even
Thundercats
liked
are amazing.
Silverhawks. I liked,
Yeah.
and then the metallic finish on the originals. I really
Like
liked
But
that
Floyd,
Backbone.
how
stuff.
can you not appreciate Skeletor, Floyd? You
All
didn't
right,
think
wait a minute. Wait,
Skeletor
no,
was
no,
pretty
no.
cool?
Don't get me wrong. I love, I love Skeletor.
So
Guys, you
cool.
can't see this, and I love
Yeah.
He-Man, but it wasn't until this series that I started buying them for myself
Yep.
because I thought I thought all the figures were great. Now, granted, the new stuff with
Masterverse and Retro.
Masterverse, some of those figures brought the Sorceress, brought Tila. Man, the Man at Arms is fantastic. Man of Arms was my favorite character in the show. You know, a weapons master. He was Q. He was the guy who brought everything. He was the man who knew all the secrets. You know, um,
Hey, he at least we got him in the movie.
oh yeah. Um,
And why did the original toy not have the mustache?
you know what? I don't know. Maybe because of the way it was designed.
Maybe
Um,
made him look like Burt Reynolds.
well, you're trying to get articulation in the face, so you sculpt the face a
Yeah.
certain way. It's hard to do that when you're covered up. Look at this. When you're covered up with this, you can't see anything.
Hmm.
And they were trying to show emote through the casting on the faces. You know, back then we'd have killed for multiple heads so that
Oh
you could
yeah.
show it with.
Well, that's the thing. Have you seen many faces for the new Eternia?
Oh yeah, I loved it.
He has
You know,
6 faces. He has like literally like he comes with a briefcase like he's Zartan with other masks that you take off the other ones and put on. It's amazing. I'm waiting to go order mine, but to answer Ryan's question about like from our perspective of why maybe people aren't universally for He-Man because it was that transition because of when it came out. I was at the perfect age for it where I was just young enough to understand what was going on and enjoy it. Most of our friends that are people we know that really are into turtles, they were at that time frame. You think of like Jose and Matt and stuff, they're literally at that perfect age when Turtles came out.
well, you
You
got
know
to
what I like
remember
too about
When He-Man came out, they were an international success. I mean, it
Oh yes,
was
it
the
was.
leading toy. So
yeah.
it's not like they weren't sought after, you know.
No, but there's a window of time though between from I think it's what 85 or 86 when the first turtle figures were coming out. And then like He-Man only went from like 80 to
Well, remember, Filmation was having financial trouble
yes, they
for
were.
a figure line that had was raking in millions and close to billions of dollars. Excuse me. To
He-Man
not put some of that money back into the animation and to make the company who actually helped sell them struggle. I think the animation using repeat images and the same music and action sequences. How many times can you see He-Man run the exact same way down a hallway and then Skeletor running
doing
the
the same way,
opposite direction in the
direction.
same motion?
Yeah.
And then you watch something that is more in the vein of, say, Wheeled Warriors,
Yeah.
Pirates of Blackwater,
Thundercats back to back, going to back to
Thundercat. Yeah,
Thundercats. If you think about it, what if the studio that did Thundercats got the rights to He-Man back then? Could you
I thought
imagine
that
how
was
They should have
amazing
definitely teamed. They should have definitely teamed up.
there
They
could
would
have
have
been a
fit
crossover?
hand in hand.
They're both take place in space on different planets. You could have had
Yeah.
that crossover.
well, one was Rankin and Bass, I believe. I believe Thundercats was Rankin and
I think
Bass.
so too.
And Filmation did a lot of rotoscoping and other things like that. And they did a lot of Rankin Bass did some fantastic animation and they were known for it.
Yeah.
And it showed.
You know what I think spoke to me about Masters of the Universe, though, especially with the villains and Skeletor. I felt like a lot of them were very horror inspired, and I really enjoyed that. And I thought it had that cool factor as a kid that it felt almost like rock and roll, like metal, like some of these character designs. They were just badass, like something like almost like an Iron Maiden character or something, like that
unless
they
you see
have on their shirt or something.
unless you see He-Man dancing to Three Non-Blondes.
Well, I mean, at least I know that there's a lot of people that didn't like, and I know Ryan, you're one of them who didn't like the Masters of the Universe movie. But
yeah, I don't enjoy it. I don't. I like things about it, but I don't enjoy it as a whole.
and the funny thing is, Sonic is almost like a mirror image of, in a way, Masters of the Universe. But for writing that script, it was based off the original comic that DC had a hand in because there wasn't a cartoon at the time when the figures came out. So they had went a total different direction compared to what we were. But it's like Dolph Lundgren was the greatest He-Man, and you're muted, Dad.
Yeah, Dolph Lundgren looks great as He-Man, and Frank Langella looks great as Skeletor.
Yeah,
they nailed that. It's like all the rest of the stuff, shenanigans in that, were kind of ruined.
Anytime you do the whole thing where bring cartoon to the real world, you're always going to come into this whole thing where it's not going to mesh quite right unless the story is written a certain way.
But can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
So He-Man, the movie, was supposed to be a trilogy of films, and the studio was afraid, and they didn't fund it properly. If it had been funded properly and it had ended on a cliffhanger like we were supposed to get, it could have very well been the next Star Wars, but it wasn't.
Right.
No.
And that is what happens when studios get a hold of something and bean counters get a hold of it instead of writers and people who are visionaries and want to tell this big story.
And then on top of that too, Cyborg was originally written to be the second movie. And of course, because they pulled out of the first one, they decided to do something different with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
What was the line called right after the original MOTU line?
The New Adventures of He-Man.
New Adventures of He-Man, which
New Adventures of He-Man. Looking back, it was pretty good. Some of those figures.
Yeah, they were great for using as a base for making other figures. That's what I did with all of mine. I took armor from one. I make other figures with it.
Yeah, because my dad bought me quite a few of the figures, and then I was like, okay, well, I want these, and Dad's like, all right, yank, and then started making the Hulk and Beast figures that weren't out yet at the time for to improve on his Secret Wars figures.
Yep, and then Angel. I did the first Archangel before he ever got made. I had Angel with bird wings. I went to a arts and crafts store and found a dove and went, "This is perfect." Took it home and yanked the wings off and sculpted
Well,
me
hold on. Remember,
an
first,
angel.
first you took
I
Ace
took the
Duck's
duck.
Ace
I
Duck's
took
wings
Ace
from
Duck's wing,
Turtles and
and
put
it
it on
looked.
there. And I was like,
And
this
it,
works okay. And then you're like, we're at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or something, and you're like, oh wow, these are great. I'm buying this and grabbed it, and then you took the wings. I wish you had some of those figures. I don't know what happened to them because I'd love to showcase
they,
them.
yeah.
But
I built one of the first Iron Man figures ever made, and I used a Silver Surfer figure as my base because I thought, man, this is the perfect base. And I used to get this sculpting putty that, if you put in the oven at 200 degrees, would harden, and it would allow me to mold the figures because they became soft into stances. There were just tons. I loved that, having something that nobody else, had at the time. I was making Cyclops and you name them. I, remember my first Wolverine. I used needles for his claws.
yeah, because you took the Secret Wars one that had the garbage claws that came out, and then you
Hi,
took.
hungry. I'm Dad.
I know.
But yeah, I
She's
remember it.
she's reminding us we're at the hour mark.
Yeah,
She,
she
she
is.
knows
She
the
is.
time.
Oh yeah, she's got it on her phone, her tablet, and it's counting down like the end of the world.
So I'll do this last thing. Name your favorite He-Man character.
My favorite He-Man character.
Mm-hmm.
I've always really loved Trapjaw. I thought is awesome. Um, I know Pixel Dan. His thing is Mosquito, but Mosquito really is freaking amazing with the blood in the chest. That was always an awesome feature to
Mm-hmm.
have on that figure. So
Yeah,
probably between those two. What about you?
He-Man for one, because I don't know, I always would gravitate to the main character. Kind of
Yeah.
looking like him now with my hair and everything, except
But
for
which variation though then of He-Man? Because there's so many cool variations. Some are vac metal.
yeah,
Like which
I probably
which
just the
vari-
just the first one, the original
Okay.
release. That's why I like the
Yeah.
40th anniversary figure so much. But I think that who was my other one that I enjoyed a lot? I don't remember. I know He-Man, but
Oh,
It's also hard to beat the
I mean Stratos. There
yeah,
was what was you loved the one with the clear chest, the cyborg dude, the robot dude. Um, you just had them all. I don't remember. I know that I always had to play the villains.
yeah.
You were like, I had to be Beast Man, and all those Moss Man and all those guys
Well,
because
the battle damage Skeletor and He-Man were great too, because that was like three figures in one. The
Mhm.
variations of the damage
uh,
on their chest.
Yeah.
with the chest that rolled,
Yeah.
and then if that little mechanism broke, it was always turning on you when you're not battle damaged yet, stay fixed.
Stay there.
And you'd move him and he'd go whoop, and it would be battle damaging. I didn't even have to touch you, He-Man, to
My
crap your
mental
father.
powers have destroyed you, He-Man. Yeah, no. But yeah, that was the thing too, is like being able to play with you and have you do the voices for stuff. So
And you wouldn't touch Tila with a tin. It's a girl. Why would they make a superhero that's a girl, a figure? And I will, because they have to balance it out. Tila was kick butt. You know, um,
but
but I remember feeling schizophrenic from doing all the villain voices. When we would be playing. But man, it was some of my favorite times spending it with you. You know, I love Transformers. Those were mine. I had to fight you tooth and nail. Stay out. I buy you Transformers, so you leave mine alone. Um, but
considering it's your favorite.
I do love Grace. I loved Grayskull. I thought it was one of the unique and great play sets. It's just classic. I never understood why. Huh? I know, honey. Go. I'll be done in a second. I never understood why the place that was supposed to be the guardian of the power of Grayskull and Eternia had a skull face on it. I was like, why isn't this Skeletor's castle? Shouldn't this
You
be
know,
Skeletor?
you know, one that was rare, it wasn't MOTU, but I mixed in with was I know I had a Spectratron where you push the button in the glitter in the chest and it kind of looked like skeleton. You know the figure I'm talking about that
Yeah.
it was filled with liquid in the
Yep.
chest and all the. Yeah, I definitely played with that. I mixed that in like it was a He-Man figure. So, man, I wish I still had that.
But as I said, my favorite was Man at Arms. I was always playing him. That was the character if we were playing, his He-Man sidekick, mentor, you know.
Well, on that note, so as we close out here, we had a lot of fun as kids playing with these things, and it helped create our imagination, or cultivate our imagination for better things. Some people got lucky and were able to tell new stories, or even tell stories within the He-Man universe. And hopefully we'll be able to do the same thing. But until next episode, everyone, we hope you enjoyed this one. We will catch you later. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.